All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about the top 5 mistakes to avoid when buying a home here in Temecula. Let's go ahead and get into it. Hey guys, hey again, my name is Justin Short. I'm a realtor and team leader with the Short Real Estate team here at Keller Williams in Temecula, California. And this video is all about the top 5 biggest mistakes that I talk to my clients about and that I see people making when buying a home here in the city of Temecula. So I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people buy and sell homes here in Temecula and the surrounding cities, and I've helped dozens and dozens of people relocate here to the area. So I think I can give you a really good perspective on what my conversations are like with my clients and other people that I've talked to. I'm from someone that's really helped a lot of people over the years. So hopefully this will be good information for you guys. But before I get into all the information, if you are liking real estate videos like this, please do me a favor, please hit like, please hit subscribe. Obviously it helps me and it helps my channel continue to grow as we try to continue to grow it and add more people. So I definitely appreciate it. And then if you guys have any real estate questions, of course I'd love to hear from you. So you're gonna see my information either down below the video or at the end. You can feel free, you can call, you could text, you could email me. That is my cell phone number. Happy to answer any questions you may have, help point you in the right direction, or of course, love to help you out with your real estate search as well. So cool. All right, so we'll get into my top 5 things to avoid, and these are things that come up a lot when I'm talking with clients when they're looking to buy homes here in the area. What people always think is the biggest mistake is the location in the neighborhood and kind of picking the wrong area there. And if you've seen any of my other videos, I've mentioned that there are a lot of really nice areas in Temecula. I would say well over 90% of the city is going to be a really nice place to live. There's really very few bad areas or not a good area to live in. There might be a neighborhood or two that has more rentals than others. You may not prefer that, but in general, the city throughout is a really nice area, and I think most people would love to be able to call anywhere in the city home. So people always think like, where's the bad area, where's the bad place to live? That's usually not the case, but there are definitely some things to know and these mistakes to avoid to help make sure it is the right home for you and your family and the right area for you and your family. So it's not necessarily just the neighborhood or what's going on there, but some of these other things. So number one, and the biggest thing that I come across when I'm talking with people, especially if they have not lived here in the area for a long time, is they don't factor in hidden cost when comparing one home to another. And so what that means, let's say if you want to go buy a home in Temecula, let's say you're going to look at a home that's say $700,000, right? What people don't realize is that if you're going to buy a home, the property tax that you pay on one home compared to another, even if they're both priced exactly the same, can vary really greatly. And it's based on the tax rate and how much of a special assessment is going to be given to a certain home. So for example, you can buy a home that's $700,000. It's a low tax home that has low special assessments, low property taxes, and that's going to be taxed right about 1.15, 1.2% tax rate. And let's say it's $700,000, and let's say you buy the other $700,000 home, and that home can be priced or have a tax rate at about 2%. So that's about a 0.8% difference on $700,000. It doesn't sound like that's that big of a difference, but per year that can easily come up to about $4,000, $4,500, even up to $5,000 a year in extra property tax, which could be an extra $350, $400, over $400 a month in a mortgage payment, just because the taxes are different on those two different homes. So this is something that is kind of unique to this area. It does exist in other areas, but it is not very common. Most parts of Southern California, this is not common. Most areas throughout the nation, this is not common. But different neighborhoods will have different tax rates by different special assessments, or sometimes you see them referred to as Melrose. So the best rule of thumb that I give people is typically an older home is going to be more of a low tax home, so they're not going to have those extra special assessments. And then typically your newer homes are going to have those higher taxes and have those higher special assessments. So we start seeing the general rule of thumb, we start seeing that cut off at right about 2003. So a home that's say 2002 and older tends to not have those extra taxes, tends to be closer to that 1.2% area. And then a home that is say 2003 and newer, you started seeing some more special assessments. So you might get up to like a 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, and then the newer you get, the higher they go. So once you're newer than 2010, you could very well be at 1.8, 1.9, or 2%. So newer home, higher taxes; older homes, going to be a little bit lower taxes. So that's why if you look at two homes that are both 700,000, if one's older and one's newer, that mortgage payment can be super significantly different on that older home, because the taxes are so much different. So that's the biggest thing that I see as far as hidden costs. The second biggest thing that I come across are solar panels. So it's a newer thing, right? We're seeing more and more solar panels on homes each year, right? If you don't live in the area, you may not know, but they're always trying to sell solar. People come knock on my door all the time, and I have solar panels, so I know it's heavily marketed, and something that people are always trying to get you to sign up for. And there can be some really big benefits for homeowners and home buyers, or there can also be some cons and negative aspects to it as well. So but a lot of times what people don't pay attention to or take into account is that if you go buy a home with solar, the biggest misconception that I see is that if I'm going to buy a home with solar and there's solar panels on there, that home is more desirable and more valuable just because there's solar panels on the home. And that's not necessarily the case, because solar comes in many different forms. You may put solar panels on your home and pay cash for them, so you're going to have a paid off solar system. If that's the case, that is a big plus to your home. That's a big benefit to your home, and that is going to save the home buyer a good amount of money. So basically, if you buy a home that has paid off solar, those panels are up on the roof, whatever electricity those panels generate is now free electricity to you as the homeowner to get to use and enjoy, without having to pay an electric bill for it. So that's a huge plus, right? But what is most common is that when people put solar panels on their roof, they don't pay cash for them. Sometimes they'll take a loan for them, but most common is they do some type of a lease. And when you have solar panels on your home and you have a lease, or sometimes it's a power purchase agreement, but it's kind of a similar system. But if you have a solar lease, that means you have panels on your roof, you pay monthly to the solar company, for that lease, for having those panels up there. And so in essence, you may not have an electric bill anymore, or you may have a smaller electric bill, but instead of sending that money to the electric company, you're now just diverting that money to the solar company. So if you have a solar lease, that does not add any value to your home. And so if you are buying a home that has solar panels that's under a lease, that home is not any more desirable. It is not worth any more than a home that has no solar panels. So that's the biggest misconception. That's kind of the biggest rub that I come across with people, is they always assume, oh, I want to buy a home with solar, it's green, it's more energy efficient, it's going to be cheaper, right? But that a lot of times, if it's a lease, that's not the case. You still have a bill, you're just paying to the solar company as opposed to the electric company. There can be some benefits, right? There's some nuance, and we could talk more about that, so you can feel free to reach out. I am pro solar. I have solar panels on my house, so there are some benefits about how your tiered billing changes. You may still save a little bit of money as opposed to not having solar, but your home, you should not pay more for a home that has a solar lease on it as opposed to a home that does not have solar panels. So I guess that's the biggest thing that I can point out to you. But if there are solar panels that are paid off, it's definitely worth more. Usually those homes sell between $10,000 to $15,000 more, maybe even closer to $20,000, depending on the home. But you got to take into account those solar costs if you are buying a home that has a solar lease on it. All right, so number 2 on my list of mistakes to avoid is not paying attention to the commute time from your specific home. So most people, if you don't know this, most people that live in the city of Temecula don't tend to work here. They tend to commute out for work. So they live in Temecula and they commute to San Diego, they commute to LA, they commute to Orange County. Most people do go to San Diego. That's the most common thing. If you're lucky enough to be able to work locally or even work remotely, that's a huge plus, and that's probably going to take away the biggest pain point for a lot of people living here. But not everyone can do that, and most people do make that commute for work. But what people don't always realize is, depending on what part of the city you live in, can really dictate and affect how long your commute is on a daily basis. So for example, if you're commuting to San Diego, if you can live in the southern portion of Temecula, so South Temecula, you'll see it labeled as, which is off the freeway. You have the 15 freeway. Temecula Parkway is like the main off-ramp, the most southern off-ramp. Anything south of Temecula Parkway is going to be considered South Temecula. But if you're commuting to San Diego, and if you live in South Temecula, your commute can be drastically shorter than someone that lives, let's say, on the north end of the city. And on a map, like if you just look at like the distance, that north end of the city might only be like 3.5 miles longer, right, or further away, right? But how long it takes you to drive there on a daily basis, it can be an extra 15, 20 minutes each way. So if you're commuting to work, commuting home, that can be an extra 30 to 40 minutes each day in extra drive time and extra commute time, just because you live on a different part of the city. So if you are commuting to San Diego, it's a huge advantage to live in South Temecula because you are going to be so close to the freeway off-ramp, and you can get off the freeway so quickly. As the 15 freeway goes further north, the traffic gets jammed up more and more and more. You can get in stop and go traffic each and every day, and then even when you get off the roads, you're going to have a lot more traffic on the main roads up there as well. So if you are going to be commuting, you really want to pay attention to how long that commute is going to take you on a daily basis to your specific address, and not just assume that as long as I live in Temecula, it's more or less about the same. But your commute can change pretty drastically depending on what part of the city you're going to live in. All right, so mistake number 3 that I see is not paying attention to what school your home is zoned for. So this is something that comes up a lot when people are moving from other states, and I know other states and counties can have different processes with that, with how the school districts work. But the way Temecula Valley Unified School District works is when you buy a home that's inside the school district, that specific home is going to be pre-assigned and zoned for different schools. So you're going to have an elementary school you're zoned for, you're going to have a middle school you're zoned for, and you're going to have a high school you're zoned for. And it's already preset based on where that home is located in the city. And I've talked to a lot of clients that have moved from other areas and helped a lot of clients move from other areas where it's different, where a lot of times there might be, say, 5 schools in the district, right, that you could choose from, and then you can apply and try and pick which one you want to go to, right? But that is not the way it works in Temecula. In Temecula, you are zoned for a specific school, and that's going to be your school. From there, you can attempt to do a transfer. So let's say, actually, this is what my family does. So where my house is, we're zoned for a specific elementary school, and we have decided to do a transfer inside the district to another elementary school that's like, it's a half-mile away, right? And we decided to do that because we like the principal, our kids have been there in the past, and we think it's a great school, right? And that's where we have friends and we know people, etc. So we do a transfer for our kids to the other school. There is a process for that. It's not guaranteed. We had to apply. You have like a waiting period, and we were lucky enough that our kids' transfer was approved. I know a lot of people's transfers are approved, especially in the elementary school, especially in middle school. And from what I understand, as the kids get older, it gets a little bit tougher because there's only 3 high schools, right? And there's probably 11 elementary schools, right? So it can be a little bit more difficult as the kids get older, but you can attempt to do a transfer. But as kind of what I want to point out is that when you buy a home in the city, your home is going to be zoned for one specific school, and if you want to change that, you need to apply for that transfer, and cross your fingers that you can get that, because it's definitely not guaranteed. All right, so mistake number 4 that I want to talk about is not paying attention to the homeowner's insurance rates. So if you guys have not been paying attention, or if you are not familiar, homeowners insurance in California has changed a ton over the last decade, and even more so over the last 3 or 4 years. The biggest reason for that is because a lot of the major insurance companies have stepped out of California, and they're no longer writing new policies, and a lot of them have actually just canceled all of their policies that are in the state. So a lot of big companies like State Farm for a period of time, AAA wasn't doing new policies, and really the list is always changing, but there are a lot of insurance companies that are no longer doing homeowners insurance in California, and there's a lot of different reasons for that, but it's beyond beyond the scope of this video, but a lot of them have stepped out of California, right? So if you live here, you've probably had your insurance company drop you, or you've had to been reassigned because the rates went up, etc. So it's a real factor for people that live here in the city. So and furthermore, what happens is if you are if your home is zoned in a high fire risk zone, then you may have to carry some additional fire insurance beyond your typical homeowner's insurance. And what that means, it's going to cost more, right? So if your home is zoned in a high fire risk area, a lot of times your typical insurance company, let's say like Mercury or whoever it is you're going to use, they won't cover fire insurance, so that means you have to carry a separate fire insurance policy. A lot of times, those typical companies won't cover you, so you have to go to what's called the California Fair Plan. It's kind of complicated, but it's like a state-sponsored program, and they will give you fire insurance. The downside to that is it's going to cost more money. And so depending on where your home is and how much of a fire risk they deem your home to be, that can cost you a little bit of money. I've seen it cost my clients about maybe $800 a year or so. That would be on the low end. So that's not terrible. It's an extra $60 a month or so, $70 a month. It's not the end of the world. And then on the flip side, I've seen on the high end, I've seen it cost them up to an extra, $4,000 or $5,000 a year beyond their normal homeowner's insurance, right? And if that's the case, that's something people aren't thinking about. It's not something you're preparing for. So what I want to point out is with homeowner's insurance, you want to make sure that you are getting an accurate quote, a full quote for how much your homeowner's insurance is going to cost you before you remove your contingencies when you're purchasing a home. So once you can do it before your offer is accepted or during the escrow process, you want to make sure that you're getting a quote from an insurance company that takes into account whatever fire zones you may be, whatever extra insurances you may need, so you know exactly how much you're going to be paying, so you don't get into something and decide that it's unaffordable and it's not going to be attainable for you and your family. So make sure you get that full homeowner's insurance quote. All right, so number 5 mistake that I see when people are buying a home is they're not factoring in their potential resale and also appreciation factors in the future. So what that means is, really when you're buying a home in Temecula, you got to think it kind of what the general area is, right? Temecula is a suburb. It's a quiet suburb. A lot of people, live here. They commute to San Diego, LA, Orange County, and they live here because it's more affordable. And what makes it so affordable is it's different county, right? We are in Riverside County. We're not San Diego County. It's a little bit warmer. There's definitely some trade-off, and you're probably gonna have to make that commute for work, right? But the major driver of people that move here tend to be people that have families and children, or people that are maybe retiring and want to just kind of cash out and get more for their money and still stay in Southern California, right? But because of that, most people that move here want to live in a single family home and not necessarily like a condo or a townhome. So a lot of times when I'm helping clients and they're coming up from San Diego or Orange County, they're used to living in like a condo life or an apartment life or something like that, and they said, hey, I can buy something here, that I can buy a townhome. It's going to save me a couple $100,000, and I can afford the home, but I think the townhome is going to be the better fit. And for some people it definitely may be, right? But what I always point out to them is that a condo and a townhome in Temecula is not going to appreciate near as much as a single family home would, because most buyers, when they're buying a home here, want to have the space. They want to have a yard. They want to have some green grass. They want to have room for a dog or their kids to play, or just to have some separation from their neighbors. So as opposed to living in like a busy city like say San Diego, to where close living is just kind of part of living here, right? There's not a lot of parking in a lot of places. There's a lot of times a lot of shared walls, things like that. But when you come out to the suburbs, people are definitely used to more space, and there's a lot of people that will not compromise on that. So your single family home is definitely going to appreciate more than like a condo or a townhome would, even though your cost to get in is definitely going to be lower. You definitely want to think about that long-term appreciation and being able to sell the property down the line if you ever do want to make a move. So anyways, I hope that helps you guys. Hopefully that's good information. Those are things that these are conversations I have constantly with clients of mine and people that are looking to buy and sell here in the area. So I hope it helps. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. You can call, you can text, you can email me, and hopefully talk to you soon. Thanks.